Welcome to section 2 of chapter 8, where we will be looking at peers. I'll touch on the developmental changes, not really getting into it, but I will talk about peer status, bullying, and friends as well. Developmental changes is just this first half of slide here, and reciprocity becomes important in peer interchanges as we go into middle and late childhood. If we are going to do something for another child or be nice to another child, we expect the same in return. The children have kind of learned the golden rule, that we should act towards others as we wish them to act towards us, and they tend to apply this. If your kindness is not rewarded or not reciprocated from another, you may stop, being kind to that person as a child, and may start ignoring them instead. The size of peer groups increase, particularly once again for boys. We talked about this in another chapter that they like larger groups. Boys are now getting more into sports and competition, and so they will tend to congregate in larger groups. Peer interaction is less closely supervised by adults. Peers are left on their own much more, and this is where they are going to do things such as experimenting with morality, making up rules, and learning from one another, whether it's morality or just about intimacy or friendship or self-disclosure. I mean, these things are going to be learned as these middle to late children, these older children, as they find themselves alone or without adults. I should say not alone, but without adults, they will start to really kind of explore their relationships more. And part of the one of the things that will come from this is much more self-disclosure as the child ages. We certainly see by the time they get into adolescence, we really define our friendships by self-disclosure and who you can share with. So this middle to late childhood stage is the transitional stage where you move from friends being like basically a play partner, like they are in earlier in childhood, to being somebody that you can trust and confide in. Anyway, so it's a little bit of an aside, but part of that comes during the times that the children are not supervised by adults. They share secrets with one another. All right. The preference for same-sex peer groups increases. Boys hanging out with boys, girls with girls, even more so. Okay. Anyways, you can read about other developmental changes in that first section. I want to move on to sociometric status, the extent to which children are liked or disliked by their peers in the peer group. The way that they do this research, I want to describe first of all, is that they go into a group of children that know each other well. So you could think of a classroom that has been together, for the whole school year, and the researchers would tend to come in sometime in the spring, towards the end of the school year, so that the children have had, months together within the same classroom to get to know one another. This research doesn't work in newly formed groups. Or you need groups that are very familiar with all the other members. What they do in a group like this, so a classroom, for instance, is that they will have each participant nominate some number of others from the group that they like the most. Who are your best friends, for instance? Pick your top 3. And so they'll give them a number and tell them to pick the people that they like the most. They will also tell them to pick the people that they like the least or that they dislike the most. So, pick, maybe 3 people that you like the least. And so each member of the group has to come up with a list of people they like, a list of people they dislike, and they basically it's all done anonymously. No one's going to find out the results, but they count up the votes for every student. So they the average child will get the average child would get 6 votes. Let's say they were doing top 3 and bottom 3, and everyone was doing that. If each person was picking 6 other people, the average child would end up with 6 votes. Some children are going to get a lot more positive votes. Other children are going to get a lot more negative votes. Some children may not get 6 votes. They may only get 1 vote or 2 votes, or maybe even no votes. Other children might get 12 or 15 votes. So there's going to be different distributions of positive and negative votes. And from this, they categorize the children into 5 groups. The first group is at the bottom here, called popular children. And they are the ones that are frequently nominated as best friends. So they get a lot of positive votes and very few or no negative votes. Obviously, popular children have good social skills, which is one of the main things that makes them well liked. Probably more than anything, good social skills. They tend to be good students as well. The other 4 categories are listed here. Average children just get an average number of positive and negative votes. So there's always kind of a middle group that they call average. The neglected children, they get very few votes of any type. So once again, they're the ones that are maybe getting 0 or 1 or 2 votes at the most. And these are obviously children that aren't very noticeable. The neglected children, it's not a negative category. It will tend to be a quiet kid who just keeps to himself. They don't rock the boat. They don't act negatively towards anyone because they're not getting negative votes. I mean, they probably, it's the person that likes to go out on recess and read a book and rather than playing with the other kids. The neglected, as far as the developmental outcomes for the neglected children, if they're doing it by choice, if they prefer being on their own and neglected, then it's considered a perfectly fine category to be in. It's only considered a negative category if the child really wants to be, more noticed, and if they want to be in peer groups and have more friendships, and for one reason or another they can't, then it would be seen as a negative category. The rejected children get a lot of negative votes and very few positive votes. This is the most at-risk category. People in the rejected category often have significant adjustment problems, especially if they're aggressive. The aggressive rejected children are the group that we really worry about, because if they don't get some kind of help, these problems that they have that cause them to be rejected by other children, and once again, particularly if they're aggressive in certain ways, I mean, they're not going to fix themselves without outside intervention. The child's not just all of a sudden going to learn to be nicer or learn to be more socially competent. I mean, often the children in this category, in the aggressive rejected category, are children that do have very poor social skills. They don't know how to make friends. They tend to have poor impulse control as well. So they react quickly and often harshly to any kind of perceived provocation. So you bump into the child, accidentally, and they think you want to have a fight or something, and just kind of blow up. Um, these are the children that we worry will grow up to be harmful adolescents and harmful adults. Um, because once again, they tend not to get better on their own. So that's one of the reasons they do this research, is to identify the rejected children and to see if there's ways to help that group. Now, there's a second type of rejected child that's not aggressive, and they are rejected because they're somehow socially awkward, or just um, they're just different in some way that children don't like at that particular age. So it might be a rejected child might be a new child to the school that's come from another country and doesn't know the language well, and so initially no one befriends them, and they're an easy target to pick. Like, I don't really like that child. Though obviously we don't worry about them as much if they're not an aggressive child. If it's just a matter of them being somehow awkward, it may be something that they do grow out of. So those ones can change over time, whereas the aggressive children, we tend not to change on their own. We find the final group is controversial children. They get a lot of votes. They get a lot of positive votes, a lot of negative votes. So these are kind of the opposite of the neglected children. They really stand out. They're getting all sorts of votes, and they're not, but they stand out, but in some kind of, some kind of radical way, I guess. They don't stand out for being popular, like, and being having good social skills like the popular kids. So when I picture controversial child, it might be the one child that wears a leather jacket to school, and has been seen on the back of a motorcycle, and maybe his parent drives him to school on a motorcycle every day, and then picks him up. I mean, he would be controversial. I mean, some people would think it's cool. Other people might think it's really weird, um, and they kind of showing off by always wearing this leather jacket around him. Another example of a controversial child, maybe the one child that's openly gay in the classroom. Um, that they certainly would often fall into this category. Some people might be drawn to their honesty and like them for the fact that they're being themselves and are open about it. Other people would turn against them right away because they have some, maybe they're homophobic or just generally don't like gay people. So I mean, like, so somebody like that might be a controversial child. So in one way or another, people in this category stand out. Okay. Anyways, this is how they do sociometric status research. Um, it tends to be in elementary school grades or in middle school grades, not very much in high school or later, just for the reason that groups tend not to stay together. Once you get to high school or college levels, um, students don't spend all their time with the same group. They move from one class to another. They get different classmates in each group, and they don't really get to know each other well enough. You can do the research, obviously, in high schools where they have the system that the same students remain together all year long. But once again, that's more rare in this country. Um, okay, this brings us to bullying. Oops, too far. Okay, so first of all, a quick stat. In grades 6 to 10, nearly 1 in every 3 students reported that they experienced bullying either as a victim or a perpetrator. So between grades 6 and 10, 1 out of every 3 children say that they've experienced bullying either as being the victim or the bully, the perpetrator. We can define bullying as verbal or physical behavior intended to disturb someone less powerful The most likely to be bullied are boys rather than girls. Those who are anxious, awkward, withdrawn, and also younger middle school students. So people that are, just to go back here for 1 second, people that end up in this neglected category, because they're, or the rejected category because they're somehow socially awkward, they might end up being uh, victims of bullying. Um, Also, bullied children report loneliness. They often have difficulty making friends. Uh, those children that have supportive friends, that have regular friendships that they hang out with, they are less likely to be victims of bullies. So the difficulty in making friends is often what leads to them being bullied, not necessarily a result of the bullying. So if you have difficulty making friends, you're going to be alone more often. You're going to stand out as a possible victim more often. As far as bullies, they are more likely to have low grades. They're more likely to smoke cigarettes, more likely to drink alcohol. Um, and one of the interesting things about bullies is they can sometimes actually gain peer status by being a bully. And so in some cases, their bullying attracts other students, and gives them some popularity amongst certain students. Certainly amongst other bullies, or people that enjoy the bullying or witnessing the bullying, and so they gain a little bit of celebrity status sometimes, the bullies, and it actually helps with their peer status. And this is one of the reasons they continue it. They're being rewarded in some fashion for their bullying. Um, okay. Some outcomes of bullying are listed here: low self-esteem, depression, suicidal ideation, uh, and attempted suicide. Um, Also, completed suicide in certain extreme cases. As adults, those that have experienced bullying, earlier in life as students, will be more likely to show anxiety, depression, agoraphobia, and to require mental health services as adults. So what this result shows is that there are some long-term effects. Though there is a correlation between those that are bullied, are victims of bullying, and those that need these types of mental health services and have these types of mental health issues. Um, Finally, one of the most effective interventions to help combat bullying um, was created by a man named Dan Olweus. I don't know how exactly to pronounce it. Olweus. It's spelled Olweus. 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 Anyways, Dan Olweus. He created a whole school approach that focuses on reducing opportunities and reducing rewards for bullying. And when it's applied correctly, it reduces bullying between 30 to 70% in a school system. And so, that is certainly a significant reduction. Once again, it's a whole school approach focused on reducing opportunities and rewards. I already mentioned that one of the things that keeps the bullying going is that they're rewarded for their behaviors. So one way to help stop the bullying is to not just target the bullies or try to find the bullies, but target those that support bullies and those that support bullying. If you can get rid of the supportive members, often the bullies will stop bullying themselves if they're not receiving the same reinforcements that maybe they used to from others. So it is a kind of overall approach. It's not just about targeting the bullies, but changing the atmosphere, the whole school atmosphere. And it's done with teacher training. It's done with teaching, with implementing new rules in the school, connecting with the students. I mean, it is certainly an overall approach. Okay, this is just some statistics and talking about different types of bullying. This is amongst those that have experienced bullying, what types they experienced. I'm not going to go through the whole thing here, but I'll just point out real quick a couple of the gender differences. You can see in the middle, the being hit, slapped, or pushed. Certainly, boys are more likely to experience physical bullying compared to girls. And if you look at the last set of bars at the bottom, being the subject of sexual comments or gestures, certainly that's the most frequent type of bullying experienced by girls, and there's a gender difference there that girls are much more likely than boys to get that. Otherwise, the other types are fairly similar between males and females. Yeah. And our last topic concerning peers is friendship. It plays an important role in emotional well-being and academic success. I just wanted to go through this list of functions of friendships. First of all, friends are typically characterized by similarity, as it says here. We like people that are similar to ourselves in one way or another. This is true all through the lifespan, as well as who we choose to date or marry. I mean, we look for people, in terms of friends or relationships that have something in common with ourselves. We're drawn to people with similar attitudes, similar interests. So friendships do end up being characterized by similarity. And the interesting thing is they become more similar, the friends, after they become friends. So there was something initially similar about them that causes them to become friends, and then they often will copy one another's behaviors and take on traits or opinions that the other one shares. And so over time they become even more and more similar. All right, functions of friendships. Here's a list here. Make sure you can these different points. Companionship is one function. That's just means that a friend might be a familiar partner and playmate, somebody that joins in with you on collaborative activities. So for the companionship function, perhaps there's somebody I like to go and shoot hoops with, and they're my regular, basketball partner, kind of when we go and shoot hoops together. And maybe there's not a lot of other things we do, but that would be a companionship role. Stimulation, often friends provide you with interesting information and excitement and amusement. A friend may be particularly humorous, so you like to be around them, or they may have great stories to tell, or I don't know, maybe they have fun toys for you to play with. Okay, so stimulation may be one aspect of friendship. Physical support is another. Physical support is a friend will give you time, resources, assistance. Like, who do you call, for instance, when you want to move? You call up a friend, and they offer their time. Or if you need to borrow some money, you ask a friend. So that's what we mean. That's what we mean by physical support. Ego support is encouragement, feedback, emotional support. So when you're down, your friend helps you out. Social comparison, friends help you figure out where you stand. You can compare your certain traits or characteristics between yourself and your friend, or certain ideas, particularly if there's certain more intimate things that you want to find out if others feel the same way you do or think the same way you do. If it's somewhat private, you'll talk to a friend about it. Hey, I believe this. Do you believe that too? Okay. And then finally, affection and intimacy is the last function. Um, Intimacy in friendships involves self-disclosure and the sharing of private thoughts. I was touching on that idea earlier. The older we get, as far as moving from childhood into adolescence, and we this intimacy aspect becomes more and more important. It's certainly more important in adolescence than it is in childhood, for instance. Okay, and that concludes our section on peers.